Yeah, hi there. These comments are for 6172, and this is Michael. I am your online TOEFL course instructor. You're also one of my students at California State University, San Bernardino. So let's take a look at what you said here. So in the beginning, I would probably... This first sentence almost sounds like you're saying it. You want to remove yourself from the reading passage and focus on summarizing the main points of the reading and the lecture. You might say something like this. Something like that. We'll get rid of this. And I might make a few corrections as we go, and I'm going to give you a score at the end. So according to the reading passage, in order to be successful, it's vital that the company force its employees to attend all meetings. I'm going to say require is probably a little bit softer word. Require its employees to attend all meetings, read all training materials, and avoid the writing process. How about the steps in the writing process because it's time consuming? However, the lecture refutes each. You want to put of these points here. Okay, now your next idea. Forcing employees to attend the company's meetings is one way to achieve business according to the reading passage. Further, the article explains the important, you need a noun, not an adjective. The importance of such policy is that employees can spend more time discussing issues. Yeah, I think you're probably a little bit wordy here, so further, the article explains the importance of such policies that employees can spend more time discussing issues. On the other hand, the listening, I'm going to say passage is probably a better word here. The listening passage contradicts those ideas. Maybe say something like this. Let's give you a bit more advanced grammar. Illustrating that any company should limit the number of meetings because I'm going to say there because meetings is plural. I think that's what you're focusing on. The meetings are time consuming, not the number, right? Because they're time consuming. Moreover, the listening or you can say the speaker suggests that every employee, use subjunctive here, don't really need to use this. We'll say the speaker suggests that every employee avoid meetings that are more than 60 minutes. Also, this is a sentence shift. This doesn't work because the previous sentence here, this is what's called a declarative sentence with a subject and a verb, and now you're switching to a command, an imperative, which doesn't work. Also, the speaker something like that. Also, the speaker encourages that employees can make good use of the communication methods such as phone and emails. How about this? Instead of attending long meetings, How about that? Also, instead of attending long meetings, the speaker encourages. How about this? Let's simplify your grammar a little bit. Encourages employees to make use of the communication of, probably don't need that, communication methods such as phone and email. Probably just say phone and email, kind of look at it as a collective thing. According to the reading passage, the company should encourage its employees to read more, yeah, this one is, yeah, let's take a look at, let's see here. I'm going to bring up
TOEFL integrate.
Wait a minute, sorry. Let me go back here and bring up the script. I think you're missing something here. Okay, so it says employees should be provided with supplementary reading materials to help them perform their jobs, and they should read all the document in its entirety, right? So I think you're missing something here. So the company should encourage its employees to read and say something like this. In fact, the author suggests that these workers read both the main and minor details of everything and the materials may be given them. So I think you just needed to put a little bit more information there, and that helps explain a little bit more about the reading, and then we can understand what the relationship is of the lecture. So you say, conversely, the listening passage, singular here, right, refutes that point by saying that workers should not waste your time reading everything. This is a run-on. Put a semicolon right there. Put a comma here, it'll work. Instead, they should read the important materials. How about they should only read the important materials using some of the reading techniques such as skimming and scanning. Okay, let's look at this. It doesn't say anything about skimming and scanning. Be careful. Don't bring things into the summary that aren't already in the original. Now, you can get rid of things, minor things that are important, but be careful. Remember, if you're paraphrasing or you're summarizing, you should not change the meaning of the original source. So I don't think what you said there, they should only read the important materials. If we go back to this, so it says, if we look at the lecture, it says you maybe find one or two examples. It says, no, wait a minute, you're right, I'm wrong, sorry about that. It does talk about skipping. Well, skipping sections. Am I right? Let's go back to what you said. I don't think you have to say that. You might say something like, even if these reading assignments come from the boss. I think it did say something like that, right? Let's go back and see. Yeah, even if it comes directly from the boss, right? So I think we're good there. Okay, so let's go to the next one. The article advises that employees, I'm going to say here, probably don't need to say this. When you're using subjunctive, you don't really need to use the modal. So the article advises that employees not devote much time in writing reports in the traditional way. Now you're missing. Encourages the workers not to separate the steps in the writing process and to write the document all at once. I think you need to put that in there. Why is that? Let's go back and see what it says. I think that's an important thing. So, the employees should not try to separate the steps in the process. They should write the document all at once. I think this information is even more important than what you see in the beginning. The beginning is more of an introductory kind of fluff information. It's the last part of that paragraph that's the most important information. You say, nonetheless, in the listening passage, the speaker emphasized the importance of following the traditional writing steps, which are to write an outline, write a rough draft, and write the final report. To sum up, the article mentions, I'm going to keep it present tense when you're summarizing. The article mentions some useful strategies and policies that, I'm going to put a comma after here, that if implemented, any company can achieve, no, not there, it's, because you're using singular here, right? So to sum up, the article mentions some useful strategies and policies that, if implemented, any company can achieve its goal. However, the lecture, singular, contradicts each of the 3 tips mentioned in I guess that's it there. Okay, I think we got it. Let's take a look at it one more time. According to the reading passage, in order to be successful, it's vital that the company require its employees to attend all meetings, read all training materials, and avoid the steps in the writing process because it's time consuming. Avoid the steps in, no, because they are or they're time consuming. However, the lecture refutes each of these points. Forcing employees to attend the company's meetings is one way to achieve business success according to the reading passage. Further, the article explains the importance of such policy is that employees can spend more time discussing issues. On the other hand, the listening passage contradicts those ideas, illustrating that any company should limit the number of meetings because they're time consuming. Moreover, the speaker suggests that every employee avoid meetings that are more than 60 minutes. Also, instead of attending long meetings, the speaker encourages employees to make good use of communication methods such as phone and email. According to the reading passage, the company should encourage its employees to read all required documents so they can perform their jobs better. In fact, the author suggests that these workers read both the main and minor details of the materials given them. Conversely, the listening passage refutes that point by saying that workers should not waste their time reading everything. Instead, they should only read the important materials, even if these reading assignments, make that plural, come from the boss. The article advises, you might say, maybe finally, when you know we're getting to the last point. Finally, the article advises that employees not devote much time in writing reports in the traditional way. Instead, the author encourages workers not to separate the steps in the writing process. You should have said that. That was important. And to write the document all at once. Nonetheless, in the listening passage, the speaker emphasizes the importance of following the traditional writing steps, which are to write an outline, write a rough draft, and write a final report. To sum up, the article mentions some useful strategies and policies that, if implemented, any company can achieve its goal. The article mentions that the policies that, if implemented, no, we got to mix construction, how about this, will help. I think the policies the article mentions some useful strategies and policies that, if implemented, that will help. Any company to achieve its goal. I'm gonna change it to that. That's a little bit easier grammar there. So, however, the lecture contradicts each of the tips. Okay, I think we got it. Okay, now the question is, how are you going to score on this thing? I don't think you're going to get a 5 or a 4. The problem is, I think you have conveyed more an incomplete, inaccurate, or imprecise. I had to put some information in there to complete some of your ideas, and you didn't want me to do that because that's going to bring your score down a little bit. But still, I think you have a really good writing style. I'm going to put you at 3.5 out of 5 on this particular task. That's going to put you at 22 points out of 30. That's where you are right now, I think, with this particular task. And for our class, the grade is, this is going to give you a 3.5 for the writing. Is going to put you at 82% on this exam. So actually, you did a pretty good job. It's a tough writing assignment. So, all right.